Welcome to this tutorial on displacement maps in Photoshop 2020. So we're just going to do a displacement map and add some text to this and get the text to blend with the fabric, this silk fabric we have here in front of us. It's an easy effect to do and match these textures. So first we go up to image, mode and grayscale. So we're just creating the texture map here, so we need to use a black and white image for that, so we discard all the color information and change it to a black and white image. We also need to add a little contrast to it, so we can add contrast by just going to adjustments and then brightness contrast and just bumping up the contrast a little bit. Click OK. Next we go to the filters and blur and Gaussian blur. So we're going to add a little bit of blur to the image just to get rid of those textures, those fine textures. We only want the large bumps, so I'm going to add about 3.5 Gaussian blur to this image. The amount of blur you add will depend on the amount of or the amount of pixels in the image, or the size of the image. So we're going to save this image now. This is a good texture map. We've gotten rid of those those texture lines on this fabric. So now next step is we need to save this as a PSD file and we can use it then as a displace map, or texture map as I called it, in Photoshop. So you have to make sure you save it as a Photoshop file, so PSD. And as you can see, I have one here created from before, so I'm just going to call this displace 02 Photoshop file type. Click save, and now we're just going to go back. I'm just going to go to the undo history and go back to the base image. Next we're going to just put some text here, so I'm going to select the text tool, click and drag over the image, so where I want the text to appear. You get this filler text initially, so I'm just gonna write these letters silk on this. 122 is about a good size for this particular image. I'm going to change the color a little bit, perhaps a kind of a yellowish color to complement this bluish color that we have here, and click on OK. So as well as adding the displace map, we'll also add some other effects as well. First we'll just change the font to something that kind of suits this material a little bit better. So maybe something a little bit more kind of handwritten. So I think we'll go with this Rage Italic. That looks good. Just move that into place. So about here. That seems good. Next, so we need to add the displacement filter. So we do that by going to distort and displace from the filter menu. I'm going to convert this to a smart object because this can be sometimes trial and error, and by converting to a smart object we can easily go back and adjust the displacement map settings without having to start over again. So initially we can just try these default settings and see what we get, and click OK then in the dialog box, and we're going to choose the file that we created for the displace map and click open. Okay, that's a little bit too subtle. So I got this by double clicking on the layer styles. We'll use this in a moment, but first I want to double click here on displace and change these displacement settings. So as I said, it can be a little bit trial and error, so we can double this to 20 and then also try tile and wrap around and see if we get a better effect. Again, we'll have to choose my displacement map, and that's again a little bit better, but maybe I want just a little bit more in terms of where the K is. It's not really wrapping around so much, so I'm going to try 40 and the horizontal and vertical scale and click on OK. Choose my displace file Okay, great, that's a little bit better for the K, and I think these are wrapping around nicely now. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So we're going to do a little bit more to make this integrate with the image a little bit more realistically. So I'm going to try different blending modes. You can experiment with these. I think for this one, maybe overlay is a good one. We can see the texture of the material in the background, and then also reducing the opacity also helps to integrate it. I mentioned before as well that you can also double clicking on the silk layer, you can choose a layer style, and layer styles will help further integrate this with it. So a bevel emboss is a good one to go with. So maybe we can try an emboss with this, might work. So just turn down the depth a little bit. That doesn't look so good, so maybe try the pillow emboss, because that's better for fabric. So depth 22%. Have a look at the size. It's a good thing to play around with these settings and see what they visually what they look like. Our angle for the shading is good, so the light in this image is coming from the kind of top right, so that's fine. The blending modes then for the shading are important, so reducing, increasing those, but this looks pretty good as you see where the light is coming from, so that's everything looks quite good there. We can also try a little inner shadow to make this look a little bit more realistic. So the angle is fine, we can see there, maybe just reduce the opacity and the distance a tiny little bit. It needs to be quite subtle to look realistic, and you can always check by turning it on and off to see how it's affecting the overall look of the image. Okay, to apply that. And okay, there we have it. So all the effects are here. So that's it. So adding some text using a displacement map to an image.